Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Peter Goldstein, founder of We Did It, and I'm so glad that you're here joining us. We have a very special guest today, and we'll introduce him in a minute. But first, please allow me to take a moment to tell you a little bit about us and what our mission is and what we're doing. We did it, and our vision is to help create a healthy, happy, well fed vegan world. Our unique role is to empower vegan and plant based consumers to be effective ambassadors. Imagine, as an ambassador, being able to confidently open more doors and plant more seeds wherever your day takes you. Our work consists of three pillars, and that's with it. First is interpersonal communication skills, so that we can listen and communicate more effectively, meet people where they are, and be effective ambassadors and plant the best seeds possible. Our second pillar is resource curation, and that's about having at our fingertips all the most appropriate resources that we can share with somebody depending on their situation. And the third pillar of our work is community. So we're building communities so we can support each other as we face the world, trying to spread the word and being the best ambassadors we can be. I hope you enjoy our conversation today. Please type your questions and we will do our best to get to having a conversation and including them in our conversation. Then please join us, follow our work by joining our Facebook groups and subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you are plant-based, also please chime in with our scoreboard at wedidit.health so that we can show the world how effective a plant-based lifestyle is for preventing, reversing chronic diseases, for the health of the planet, and for the health of animal kingdom and animal justice. So with that, I would like to welcome my my team member, Marquita Solis, and she will talk a little bit about our very special guest today and introduce him. So hello, Marquita.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Peter. Yes, we are so blessed today and honored to have this amazing guest. And let me ask everyone also first, if you're watching on StreamYard, please give StreamYard permission to use your name because we want to know who's out there and tell us where you're joining from. And we want to hear your comments and questions. So that's very important. So thank you again for joining us. And today we have Dr. Will Tuttle, who's the visionary author of the acclaimed bestseller, The World Peace Diet. And this has been published in 17 languages. And Dr. Tuttle is a recipient of the Courage of Conscience Award and the Empty Cages Prizes. He's also the author of several other books on spirituality, intuition, and social justice, as well as the creator of online wellness and advocacy programs. A 40-year vegan and a former Zen monk, he's featured in a number of documentaries and is a frequent radio, television, and online presenter. So we are tremendously honored to have Dr. Tuttle here with us today, bringing on all of his wisdom, all of his knowledge and experience, and his wonderful tips on how to get through this holiday season with family and friends. So thank you so much, Dr. Will, for joining us. And let's get him on here.
All right. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Peter, for the great work that you're doing with We Did It. And thank you, Marquita. It's always good to see you and your beautiful, shining, radiant self and helping to bring this fantastic message. It's really the gospel. You know, the gospel means good news, the good news of the basic fact that all of us as human beings have been given the gift of a physical body that does not require any animals to be imprisoned or harmed in order to get all the nutrients that we need to celebrate our lives on this beautiful earth. And the more, like you say, Peter, the more we can be ambassadors for this message, the more effectively we can do that, the better I think it is, obviously, for everyone. And the more I think we're fulfilling our mission on this earth in this lifetime, which is an important thing to be aware of, I think, especially nowadays when there's so many challenges that we're facing on so many levels. So I'm delighted to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And we're hoping that to start the conversation, we'd love to hear a little bit about your work and how people can be involved with it and support it. And also then we'd love to hear from your perspective some of the pointers that you would like to share with the ambassadors, so that part of our mission here at this moment is we're doing this Thrive and Inspire through the holiday series, because being with family, being with friends at this time of the year is extra daunting and challenging. So if you can share some of your pointers, how we can be more influential and not have to suffer emotionally for all the terrible things that some of us have experienced in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So I'm happy to talk about that. The basic thing with my work really is right in alignment with what you're talking about. It's how we can embody what veganism is if we're already vegan. If we're not, if we're pre-vegans, then how we can just basically open to all the many benefits that we can accrue for ourselves and for others by questioning the official narratives in our society regarding food. So right now at this moment, I am in New Mexico at the Elephant Butte State Park. I'm looking out over this gigantic reservoir, this lake. It's the Rio Grande is dammed up, and it's a huge lake. We've been here for a few days. This is by solar power. We have solar panels on this little micro. I'm in a tiny micro van. So Madeline and I are living for 4.5 months in a space that is 48 square feet. So we get to know each other really well. And but we've been happily married for 30 years, so it's not too difficult. But we're connected up with my cell phone, so I'm hoping that the technology will work okay. Just to say that at the beginning. And so we're kind of hanging by a thread. But I'm really glad to be able to do this. We'll be giving a lecture in Las Cruces tonight and tomorrow. We just gave lectures promoting veganism in Santa Fe and Albuquerque a few days ago, and then we're on our way to Texas and Florida on this lecture tour. It's called the Benevolent Revolution Tour. So a lot of our work really is in grassroots advocacy, connecting people at the grassroots. And so I wrote the book, as you mentioned earlier, Mariquita, The World Peace Diet, which I think has helped transform a lot of people's lives, and that's what I've heard. It's been translated into all these languages, so we've been able to travel all over into all 50 states, over 50 countries in the world, in Asia, Africa, Europe, pretty much everywhere, all over the Middle East and so forth, to bring this message. And I think there's a growing awareness that if we don't succeed in moving to a plant-based way of eating and living, then our chances of survival really are getting very slim in many ways, because of not only the physical health problems that we're having, but especially the environmental devastation. And as I point out in the World Peace Diet, world hunger, because it's really important to understand that animal agriculture is just ridiculously wasteful of resources, especially land and water and petroleum, and causes enormous amounts of pollution that lead to deforestation and water depletion and water pollution and all kinds of devastation to the oceans. I mean, the environmental impacts are just horrific of animal agriculture, and that also contributes to conflict in the world and war, and when you have nuclear weapons and so forth. So it's really fundamentally important to understand these outer problems that animal agriculture causes. But the main thrust of my work actually has been to also shed light on the inner damage that is done to us by living in a society that's organized around animal agriculture. So I think it's important to talk about that, or to understand that. And so, but the main point I want to say here, as far as effective advocacy, is that we just tell our own story. Instead of trying to point our finger at the other person and telling them that they should know better and what they're doing is causing trouble and so forth, it just makes people feel defensive. And we already have that problem. And I think the main problem in the vegan movement in many ways is that if we go vegan, we start to learn more about the consequences of animal agriculture. And pretty soon we feel like we really are an expert. And then we want to shake everybody. That's how I was. I wanted to shake everybody until they went vegan. I'm not going to stop shaking you till you go vegan, that kind of a thing, because it's really important. But we have to understand that if someone were to come up to me and look at me and act with me as if I'm basically wrong and bad and I should be like them, the natural healthy response is to fight back, leave me alone. And so that's what we're just not going to get anywhere if we have that attitude, because we just create more resistance. So, and the other thing is we think that since we're vegan, we're basically perfect and everybody else is the problem. We're not the problem, they're the problem. So this whole thing is very understandable, and vegans are well-meaning, but we have to realize that we need to learn, number one, to listen to other people and not always tell them. And number two, even more importantly, I think, or just as important, to not tell them what they should do, but talk about what we have done and how wonderful it is, because people cannot argue with our own story. If I just tell my own story, this is what happened, and do it in a way that's friendly and with love and authentically loving, be authentically caring about other people, because that's really what veganism is. At its core, it's caring. That's the word, caring. I care about animals. I care about ecosystems. I care about hungry people. I care about slaughterhouse workers. I care about indigenous people. I care about future generations. It's caring about my health. All these things are really important to care. So it's important also to care about the people we're speaking to. And in that way, not that we're trying to change them, because that's a form of violence, really. If I come along and want to change somebody, but rather, like you said to plant seeds. We can plant seeds effectively, though, or we can plant seeds ineffectively. And I think the most effective way, like I say, is to generate this feeling of love, not only for the non-human animals. It's not really that difficult to care about cows and pigs and chickens, because they don't go around insulting us and making us feel judged and wronged and all that. But to actually work in a kind and loving way with other human beings, the human animals, so to speak, that's where the spiritual work is so important. It's important for us to do the inner work, that we actually develop a way of seeing others that's not judgmental, and instead of blaming them and shaming and criticizing people, that we see that basically they've been wounded. They've been, we've all been wounded by being raised, like I was, in a society eating animal food. So I did it for the first 2 or 3 years of my life, I think it was. And then I went vegetarian, and I guess 22. And then about 5 years later, I went vegan. And so that was back in 1980. But it took a lot. And it was other people's example, really, that helped me the most, seeing healthy vegetarians and healthy vegans. And I think when we can just be an example and then tell our own story. So I'll just end this little part by saying that I think if we want to be effective, to tell our story in a very positive way, in a way that's not in sort of confronting people, and short and simple, not going to a big long thing typically, because if we just keep it short and simple, then people go, okay. And so the idea is just plant the seed and then let go. Don't try to, give a big long thing, unless they really have questions. Of course, then you can answer. But the basic gist would be this: I'm so happy and grateful that I discovered that the only reason I was eating animal foods all those years that I did was because I was just following orders. And then I realized it wasn't in my best interest, so I'm not doing it anymore. And it's fantastic. That's it. That's all you have to say. It's just like 3 main points. The only reason I was doing it was because I was following orders. I realized it wasn't a good idea, and it's fantastic that I'm not doing it anymore. Those 3 points, because that's true for everyone. When we go out into the world and we see people, whether they're just strangers or they're our closest friends and neighbors and family, that's the only reason anyone eats animal foods, took me a while to figure that out, is because we're following orders that were basically injected into us by very loving, well-meaning people who wanted to make sure we got enough calcium and protein and ate a lot of cheese and meat so we'd be healthy. It's a wound. It's totally erroneous, but people believe it because we've all been deceived by being raised in this society. So people believe that you have to do it. So just saying, gosh, I discovered I was just following orders and they weren't really very good. And then if you know the person's particular proclivities and they care about the environment or they care about animals, you could say, and I realized it was really, causing a lot of suffering to animals, and I'm not doing it anymore. And it's fantastic. And then let go, because that way they're not feeling pressured. Really, you can just let go. Like the Bhagavad Gita says, don't be attached to the fruit of your actions. Just do the right thing and let go. And then their own wisdom and their own compassion will gradually water the seed that you have planted. And then as that happens, that little plant grows inside them, that vegan little beautiful sprout grows, and they think about it later. And if you do it really well, they'll forget who you are. They won't even remember you. Just plant the seed. And then at some point they'll go, I'm going to try that vegan thing, because I think when we plant the seed, it's a seed of truth, and truth is something that resonates with all of us at our core. And we know, I think, at a deep level collectively, that the way we're living is not in harmony with nature. It's not in harmony with our true nature, and causing violence and eating violence and toxicity. It's pretty hard to you can't justify it, except that it's habit and it's tradition, and I'm afraid to change. It's just fear, really. So when we plant the seed and we do it positively, then we've just opened the door to the prison. That you have just opened the door. They can walk out of that prison. You've just showed them, like I walked out. You can walk out of the prison if you want. And some people will go, well, I'm gonna walk out of the prison slowly. Slowly get there and gradually become a vegan. That's good. Or some people just walk out. You can just walk out right now if you want. There's nothing stopping. There's nothing holding you there except maybe what your friends and family might judge you for not eating their food anymore. And that keeps people in the prison quite a bit. But if we can learn to realize that every time we do something that's loving in the world, even if it goes against the tribal morality, it actually is good for everybody. So that's the basic perspective I have on advocacy. I think it's a very fine art. I mean, I've been doing this for 42 years as a vegan activist, and I'm still learning every day. I mean, there's always more to learn. We can always become more effective in our advocacy. We can always be more spiritually evolved so that we're intuitive to what people will resonate to, and we can always be more loving. So I think it's a never-ending path of spiritual and psychological and intellectual growth. It's not just I'm vegan or not vegan. It's a never-ending path. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Wow. Absolutely. Yeah, I love your messages, and what we're doing is we're building a platform to amplify everybody's voices, and I'm just so excited. This is the first time we interact, and I really hope that we'll have lots more, and we can help share your messaging with the community we're building. Yeah, so many things you've said. I love that you say it's a truth, and it is. To me, it's as true as if you drop a ball, it falls to the ground. That's absolute truth, and about everything about being plant-based and that being an absolute truth. This is where humanity needs to go, and it's an absolute truth. So really, we're advocating for something that is true. So it's a good thing. It's an easy thing, easy in that we never have to doubt it. I love it. I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about spirituality. And I've always felt that this is very spiritual, and bringing spirituality into this whole platform is something that we haven't talked about yet. But I'd love to hear you talk a little more about it.
Right. Well, thank you. And you're right. Like I said, I've given, over 4,000 lectures all over the world, and they pretty much all of them have a Q&A. And so I've heard literally, I think, every possible question that anyone can hear, trying to find a way to wriggle out of veganism and compassion for animals. And you're right. There is no, I've never heard anything, no one that made me go, maybe I should eat some meat. It's like, there is no, it's like trying to justify raping or whatever. I mean, it's like, no, it's not, it's unnecessary violence. It's not necessary. And that's the beautiful truth, that there are no nutrients that are in animal-based foods that didn't come originally from plants. So if we eat the plants directly, we can get all the vitamins and minerals and protein and carbohydrates and lipids and fiber, which there isn't any in animal-based foods. And carbohydrates is none of those either. The most important things are not even in animal foods. So the truth is like so solidly on our side. I mean, it's just so totally solidly. We could feed everyone on a fraction of the land. I mean, just imagining a vegan world is imagining a world we can't even imagine. It's so, the possibilities are so beautiful of how we could live in harmony without harming the earth and ecosystems. I mean, what it would do to us psychologically to not be causing violence every single day by taking out our wallets and paying other people to stab and rape animals and then eating that and feeding it to our children. We have no idea how absolutely devastating that actually is to the inner landscape of our consciousness, because it's been normalized through 10,000 years of creating a culture. But we crossed a line 10,000 years ago we should never have crossed. And we started owning animals as property, enslaving them, and then deliberately impregnating them and stealing their babies and killing their babies. I mean, we had to shut down our spiritual consciousness to do that. We had to shut down what I refer to in the World Peace Diet as Sophia, which is the Greek goddess of wisdom, which represents the inner spiritual yearning to love and care and support and nurture life. It's the foundation of a healthy child, right? If a little baby is born and the mother for some reason doesn't have Sophia energy, she just doesn't care about that baby, I mean, that baby is going to be really wounded and be physically and mentally and on every level very sick, and maybe would die. So this Sophia energy is in men and women. We have this capacity. I think women have it even maybe more, this natural yearning to love and care for life. And it's the foundation of the healthy individuals, of healthy families, of a healthy society. And what animal agriculture does, though, it suppresses Sophia in all of us, because we have to eat terror and pain. We have to just not think about, I don't care about pigs and cows and chickens. We don't care about hungry people. That's the subtext of every meal, is we don't care. We don't connect. The subtext of every meal is disconnectedness, not making the connections. My PhD at Berkeley was in education, and I studied intelligence. And intelligence, the definition of intelligence is the capacity to make connections. So if you have the main ritual in every society, which is eating meals together, that's the foundational ritual that is the main way that any society transmits its values from generation to generation, that ritual is basically eroding the intelligence of people, not only the cognitive intelligence, but the ethical intelligence, the emotional intelligence, and the spiritual intelligence of everyone in that society. Every single day, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, we don't make the connection. We stay shallow. We don't look deeply. We don't care deeply. We don't feel deeply. It's just bacon. It's just cheese. We don't think about the being. We learn to become very skilled at staying shallow and not knowing what we're doing. And so we become a tragic society. I used to teach college courses in the Greek tragedies. The tragic hero is someone who has 2 main character defects. One is hubris, which is pride, thinking I'm superior to everybody else. And the other is this obtuseness, this inability to make connections, just doesn't get it. That defines our society today. We are very proud and we're very obtuse. And it's not a criticism. It's just that's the wound that animal agriculture inflicts on us. When we're born into a society and we are compelled to sit there and eat terrible suffering and violence and not think about it by everybody, then that's what it does. And so essentially what we're talking about with We Did It and with the veganism is ahimsa. Ahimsa is the old Sanskrit word that means nonviolence. It's the foundational spiritual principle in all the world religions. And it's resurrecting Sophia. It's resurrecting this basic inner feminine wisdom in all of us to love and care for and nurture life. And not only others, but ourselves, to really respect ourselves. We can never have self-respect if we're not respecting other living beings who have interests. And we all know in our society that cows and pigs and chickens are like dogs and cats. People have dogs and cats. They know when they look at their dog or cat as their companion animal, there's a being in there that has interests to her or him that are as significant to them as mine are to me. And we would never allow someone to come in and buy them by the pound and lock them up in a closet and make them live in their own excrement and hang them upside down. We would never allow that because we care about them. Well, we obviously can care about other living beings as well that are just essential and capable of suffering. And when we don't, that is the essence of a spiritual disconnect. Spirituality and veganism are absolutely identical. There's no difference between them. They're the same fundamental reality. Veganism is ahimsa, nonviolence. It's the golden rule. The golden rule is the core of the world religions. I mean, every religion. Remember when we went to China, it was so great to go to the city of Chufu where Confucianism started, and they had right up there, Confucius way back around 500 BC wrote, "Do not do to others what you would not want to have done to yourself." We are capable of suffering. We know that. And so that feeling of suffering, no one wants to suffer. And if we inflict suffering on others, we have a natural, healthy sense of empathy to not do that because we know what it's like ourselves. So when we break that day after day, causing suffering to others, we can't. We have to disconnect from that. So the world religions all honor at the core this teaching. And that's the beautiful thing. I also used to teach college courses in comparative religion, and every religion agrees on that. The essential teaching is whatever you most want for yourself, give that to others. Basic teaching. And it also links in with the other main teaching in all the world religions, which is whatever you sow, so shall you reap. What we put out always comes back. So for us to be so naive and gullible to think that we can sow the seeds of disease and violence and misery millions of times every day in the United States, actually billions when we include marine animals, it's billions of times every single day, and expect that we are worthy of a society of freedom and joy and health and peace for ourselves while we're riding on this ocean of suffering that we're inflicting. These animals are in our hands. They're in our hands, each one of them, and we can let them live their lives and be free, or we can just crush them and abuse them. And that's what we do. It's not that we're bad people. It's just that we've been programmed by a cultural indoctrination by the people we trust the most, our parents and friends and teachers and neighbors and relatives, the minister, the doctor, the mainstream media, everything. It's a united front that this is how we have to do it. God told us to do it. It's like even in the religion, more or less. So that's the thing. So veganism is spirituality, and yet we have to remember there's a basic difference between spirituality and religion. There's two interesting points I'll make just very briefly. One is that religion has these two missions. One mission of religion is to authentically support spirituality. It is. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about religion. That's very important. Science does not have that mission. We have to really understand that science has nothing to do with ethics or spiritual growth. In fact, in many ways it's against it. I'm really realizing that science is very dangerous. But the point is that religion has this beautiful core of caring and teaching spirituality and the golden rule. That's in there. But the problem is that the other mission of religion is to support the society that it's in, like to basically support the cultural narrative of whatever society it's in. And so if that society is a herding culture, like we live in a society organized around herding animals, then basically the religion finds ways to support that. Because otherwise you have to get another religion. So I think the founders of the religion, like if you look back in Jesus and many of these great sages and saints in the past, they were promoting compassion for animals. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And same thing with in Buddhism and other traditions. And so it's very interesting to me that in other societies, like especially in Asia, where there was not such a strong herding culture, the religion, like when you say thou shalt not kill in Christianity and Islam and Judaism, that means humans. It doesn't mean animals. They say, well, that's okay to kill animals, but that's just humans. But in Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism, most forms of Hinduism, not killing means not killing any sentient being. Really, that's what they say. I mean, I was a Zen Buddhist monk in Korea, and that was really one of the things that deepened my understanding of veganism, because I was a vegan here, and then I shaved my head, I became a Zen Buddhist monk, and I was living in this monastery in South Korea, and I realized I was in a community in South Korea, this Zen Buddhist community that had been practicing veganism for 750 years, since 1200 something or other. And so I realized that they were doing it out of a spiritual teaching, that if you're really sincere about spiritual awakening and you're sincere about creating a society of peace and justice and freedom and equality and sustainability, then animal agriculture, we can never support that. That's violence against other sentient beings. So they understood that. Like hundreds of years ago, I would say probably thousands of years ago, this was understood. And it's part of the basic sanity of our and spiritual heritage of humanity, is that understanding. But that's understanding has been suppressed. But it was so great when I would go to, say, China and Taiwan and Vietnam and Korea, the Buddhist community, they would pay for my flight. They would pay for me to come and spread the vegan message. And they were trying to get people to go vegan, because that's part of the teaching of that of Northern Buddhism, of East Asian Buddhism. And I remember coming back to the United States and thinking, gosh, it really would be great if the Christian churches or these other, would just pay to spread the vegan message, because that's part of the teaching. It's a basic teaching of kindness and compassion for animals and humans and future generations. Of course, it should be part of the teaching, but it's so far it's very much one of those things where there's a lot of dissonance. I think religious people know that the golden rule really would apply to animals, and so they're uncomfortable with the whole thing. But gradually, I think if we just keep at it and keep planting seeds, it'll become more and more undeniable that this is part of the way it is. And we are making progress. I mean, there's progress being made. It's not easy, because we have this huge 10,000 years of inertia, but spirituality is essentially the awareness, the direct awareness that what I am is a manifestation of consciousness. See, this is the key problem in our society, is that animal agriculture leads to philosophical materialism, because we're buying and selling animals by the pound. You cannot get more completely deluded into the depths of materialism than to buy a living being by the pound. That's the ultimate. That's the ultimate. And we do it billions of times every day in our society. I mean, on one level, I have to wonder, how do I tolerate living in a society that is so grossly materialistic, the most materialistic society in the history of the earth, that's selling billions of animals by the pound. And so we have a philosophical materialism that's just injected into us at such a deep level. And that's the absolute opposite of spirituality. It's seeing beings as objects to be used, to be manipulated, to see a being merely as matter, as an object that was born and will die. And when we do that to millions of animals, pretty soon we see ourselves that way. I'm just an object that was born and will die. I'm just a thing that in a meaningless universe. That's what science, I mean, this big bang and random mutation of everything, and nothing has any meaning. It just sort of happens somehow. There's nothing, and we're just objects. Then you want to enslave people, you teach them that, because that reduces their basic sense of being connected to a magnificent, intelligent universe, that what they are is consciousness. We all know that. And the thing is, though, we're not taught in our society to meditate or to engage seriously in self-inquiry, to go deep into the question of what am I? What is this being? And if we can actually meditate effectively enough and practice. I was born and raised in a musical family, and I learned to practice. I had to practice the piano every day. And I realized when you practice something, you get good at it. We practice materialism, we get really good at it. If we practice meditation and quieting the mind and learning to listen internally and take a few hours every day just to watch the mind, and when the mind thinks a thought, to let it go, eventually we'll get to the point where we can begin to glimpse the infinite, eternal, radiant sky of our true nature, which was never born and will never die. And when we get those glimpses, we realize the love and joy and absolute complete freedom and creativity that are our true nature. And we look at others and we see the same thing that looks out of my eyes is looking out of their eyes. It's the same source. We all have the same source. Other human beings and all living beings, we're all manifestations of the loving essence of life that births this entire universe. And it's not material. It's consciousness. It's spirituality at its core. It binds us together. When we see that, then we are living a vegan life. I mean, we naturally are drawn to that because we realize that it's like this finger is going to fight against this finger. You know, we're all fingers on the same hand in a sense. And so I think when this understanding is what really creates a sense of living a vegan life that is on the most solid foundation, because we realize it's not an option. It's not like, well, I could be or I couldn't be. We realize it's really our true nature. And it's a joy. It's an absolute joy. It's an absolute, I mean, to do anything else would be ridiculous. It would be unthinkable. So I think the whole idea is to try to help people, because a lot of vegans are sort of anti-religion, even anti-spirituality, because they went to church and there was a fish fry and then barbecue, and they think, oh, these religions, they're all hypocritical. I hate religion. I hate spirituality. Don't go there. I mean, religion, it's not perfect, but there's a deep underlying foundation of the golden rule. And as you sow, so shall you reap. I mean, these are really important ideas that are not in science. And we have to be careful. We have to be very careful and keep the yearning inside of us to discover our true nature and to realize that if we don't understand what we are and we just fall for the cultural narrative that we're just an object, then we're in many ways imprisoned in delusion and we're deceived. And that deception, I'll just say this is the last thing I'll say about this. Deception is really rampant right now. And animal agriculture is one of the main deceptions. But it's very important to understand this, because if we're harmed by someone, usually we know we've been harmed, right? If someone comes up and hits us, or they abuse us, they steal something from us, we're like, wow, I got harmed. But if someone comes up and deceives us, we've been harmed, but we don't even know it. We have no idea. It's like we think they're the greatest person. We believe everything. That's how we get enslaved, is that we've lost the ability to see when we've been deceived. And we are being deceived so much and harmed, but we don't see it. So I want to really emphasize to everyone, the greatest gift we can give to the world in many ways is to cultivate our discriminating awareness so that we can connect authentically with our inner intuition that understands the truth of things and connect with the truth. And when we do that, and no one can do that for someone else, that's something we have to do, and then live that truth, because the truth is under attack. And living in an animal agriculture society, it's deceiving us from the time we're born. And when we can overcome that basic deception and then keep questioning, don't stop there, question all the cultural narratives about everything, we can find much greater health, joy, and freedom, and co-create a world of beauty and love as each one of us takes responsibility for the quality of our awareness of what is the truth, and the quality of our relationships, the quality of our health. Don't depend on others. This is something we each need to do ourselves.
Yes, that's so true. And I love the spirituality and awaken to that. And we learn things sometimes and then we hold on to them. But so I love that explore the newness here, right? About spirituality. And I wanted to know about, I know a lot of people are struggling with the holidays. How do you go if a lot of people think these are bad people, right? They're eating meat. Or, right, how can these people eat meat? I don't want to be with my family at the holidays. How can we mend those, or what would you recommend to the people that are out there that are isolating themselves and really sad? And how can they be understanding to other people? How can they bring that compassion, this beautiful compassion, right? That I feel like the spirit of veganism is compassion. How can they bring that to people that have not yet seen the light?
Thank you. That's great, Marikita. I would say the most important thing is to cultivate a long view. It may take a while, so when we're dealing with just strangers, then we can plant the seed and we're not that attached to it. It's like we hope that they go vegan. That'd be good for them, good for everybody. When it's our mother, our father, our children, our spouse, our relatives, the claws can bite into us. We go to dinner with them, the turkey's on the table, maybe we've told them, we don't want to do that. It's very emotional and stressful, because they feel that we're rejecting them, and we maybe feel that they're rejecting us. So to find, essentially, I've been going through this for many years, but the idea is to try to, first of all, not blame anybody. Just understand that everyone has their programming, and the programming, we had it at one point ourselves. And just because we've been able to see through it doesn't mean that others are bad if they haven't. I like the metaphor of a tree. We've planted about 70 fruit trees in where we live in Northern California, and the fruits don't always ripen at the same time. Some ripen way before the others, and I don't go up to the ones that haven't ripened yet and start yelling at them and say, "You stupid apple! What the heck's wrong with you? You should have been ripened. Your other one's already ripe. What's wrong with you?" It will ripen. They all have their own rhythm. They all have their own nature. They all have their own whatever. And so, to just understand that, and understand that we've been wounded in different ways. Some people more severely than others. People who are more wounded maybe have a harder time getting over it. And when someone's wounded, you don't go up and spit on them and kick them and yell at them and say how bad they are that they've been wounded. The natural tendency when someone's wounded is to be loving and try to help them and try to shine some light or give them some tea or whatever. So I think just be understanding that people are where they are, and we're not going to accelerate the process by in any way being abusive or feeling that they're abusing us. Don't take things personally. There's a great story from the Taoist tradition about a guy who was out on a lake, and he was enjoying the lake so much in a boat, and he was laying on the boat and he was looking up at this clouds drifting by in the sky, and he was just so relaxed and so happy. And then all of a sudden, bam, like some other boat ran into him, and he was laying there and he's thinking, what a jerk, what a stupid person, who could have just didn't care, they just ran right into me. So he gets up, he's ready to fight, he's really angry, to yell. and he sees this boat that hit him is empty. There's no one in the boat. It was just pushed by the wind and ran into him. So he starts laughing. We have to realize it's all empty boats. People are driven by the winds of their conditioning and they bang into you. There's no point in yelling at the empty boat. It's just, that's what it is. It's an empty boat. It's not trying to make you upset or whatever. People have been wounded and are drifting in the wind. So when we understand that, then we can relax a little bit and plant the seeds. And what I discovered is I've been, at this long enough. For years, I was working with my sister, my mother, and to try to get them to see the light, and sometimes it went pretty well, and sometimes it didn't. I remember at one point my sister got upset with me, and she slammed the door and she walked out and she said, "You vegans, you think you're so self-righteous and you're so right all the time." And I thought, well, I guess I went a little too far that time. We just do our best. But I kept the conversation going over the years. The years went by, and I would send links to videos and this and that. And when we eat, Madeline and I, we would always bring healthy vegan food that we could share and show them. And she was part of a very fundamentalist Christian community, so it was very difficult. They were all pretty much into eating animal foods. And at one point, though, I got an email from my sister, and she said, "I just want you to know that the Lord came to me and told me to go vegan." And that was probably 17 years ago. So it took me probably 20 or at least 15 years for that to happen. But now it's been 17 years of 17 wonderful times where we get together, have a vegan Thanksgiving, a vegan whatever it is. And her daughter's vegan. Her daughter has 4 children that are all vegan from birth. My mother went vegan also at the same time. And so it took me 15 years, right? So some people say, well, I say, how long have you been trying to get your family to go vegan? They say, well, I've been trying for 2 years. I think, well, okay, well, just relax. It'll take a while, maybe. Might take 15 years, but whatever. It may never go. I don't know. But the whole idea is to just do our best, and we keep planting the seeds. Then don't feel like we have to pressure it to happen. We have to do our best. That's I guess what I can say, and be loving in the situation, and keep questioning our own sense of righteousness about these things, because really, yeah, we're right, but there's many other factors involved in people's lives, and so just keep planting the seed with love. And that's because getting upset, all it does is hurt us. I mean, it just hurts our own body. And to be effective vegan advocates, we need to be healthy. So it's important that we have emotional maturity, that we don't take things like that personally, and we do the best we can to create harmony in our life. And what we've done also where we've lived is we always create a vegan Thanksgiving and invite everybody to come. So we've had 40, 50, 60 people come to a vegan Thanksgiving. So because a lot of times vegans like, what am I going to do? So get together with other vegans and create vegan Thanksgivings in your community and do that. That's another thing you can do. And then tell your family if it's really not working, say, I'm with you in spirit, but we're having a vegan Thanksgiving here, and we'll see you another time, or however you want to do it. But I think it's good to be proactive, to take our whatever energy we have and turn it into something positive, rather than fret about something negative. Create something positive. Create delicious vegan food and share it somehow.
Beautiful.
That's beautiful. Yes. Well, thank you. We have so many comments here, people loving what you're saying. And, I've shared some of them on screen. So thank you, everybody, for your feedback. We still have about 10 more minutes. If anybody else has any questions, we'd be happy to consider them and try to answer them. And I know Dr. Tuttle, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. You have so much insight, and so appreciate everything you're saying. To be patient is so important, and the concept of not stressing ourselves is so important. And all that you're saying is, we so love it, and really hope that you can join us again as we dive a little deeper into spirituality, into self-healing, into self-care. uh, Keep talking about planting the seeds with patience. And I suppose I'm going to change my language around that a little bit, and not just planting seeds, but planting seeds with patience and love. And so thank you for all of that. Uh, this is so beautiful. Um, for me, I've noticed that there are some people who are vegan, who are religious, and they have their religious messaging, and perhaps we can give them a voice too, so they can carry it through religion and into religion. Our mission is to amplify everybody's voice, and to be the center where an ambassador can turn no matter what the opportunity is. So be it a religious opportunity, or be it about climate healing, or be it about a health condition, we want to be the resource that will support them in having a successful opportunity to patiently plant seeds. Best practices, uh, yeah, there you go, Jeff. Best practices for guiding people to find the inner connection. So yes, Jeff wants to know about best practices for guiding people to find their inner connection.
Yeah, that's a good question. And thank you, Peter, for your comments too. I think that the main thing, and there's probably a few different ways to look at this, but I think that when we talk about practices to find our inner connection, first of all, veganism as a foundation, I think, is very important. So that goes kind of without saying. But as long as we're eating animal foods, that's cutting off our connection. I would say while you're at it, try to make your diet not only a plant-based vegan diet, but also organic as well. Organic is really important nowadays because the chemical industry is really going overboard with glyphosate and other toxic chemicals that are in everything now. So I think these things really devastate the microbiome in our gut, and when that happens, then there's a direct connection between the microbiome in our gut through the vagus nerve to the emotional centers in our brain. And if the bacteria and the microbiome in our gut has been, even if we're vegans, if we're not eating healthy vegan food, organic and whole foods, I think, are better than processed foods. If we have a healthy microbiome and the bacteria are happy, then we will feel much happier in general. If they're not happy, we're not going to be happy. You know that old saying, if mama's not happy, nobody's happy. If the bacteria is not happy, nobody's happy. Because the basic thing is this is only being understood in the last several years more clearly, but we have all kinds of emotional hormones and so forth that get activated. And if there's a struggle down in our gut, not only is it physically, our health physically challenged, but there's there's a sense of anxiety that can come, a sense of frustration and so forth. So eating a really healthy diet is important. Another practice, of course, I emphasized meditation already, but I think really being conscious of our thoughts. Like when you have an opportunity, like I have an opportunity when I wake up in the morning to make a discipline or a practice of giving thanks, right? Just giving thanks for another day, another opportunity to learn, to grow, to share, to contribute, and just however you want to do it individually, but to just connect with that thought, but also the feeling of joy that we have another wonderful day, another opportunity. And let that feeling just go in every cell of your being, that your body is your vehicle, that what you are is eternal consciousness, and your physical body is your vehicle, and be grateful that you have this vehicle, and let that feeling go deep, and then have a morning ritual. I think it's really good to have a morning ritual that connects you with your true nature. So what I do, for example, I do that, and then do some water, different things, and cleansing the sinus and so forth, and then meditate. Right, I sit quietly, and I take about 2 hours for this. So meditation, and then some yoga or some kind of exercise is good. Maybe journal writing, letting yourself write what you feel wants to come through can be very helpful. Taking time, I take a swim in the lake down below. And then I play the piano after the 2 hours over. I do something creative. I think creativity is really important and very helpful. Connecting in a positive way. If there's people in your life, like at that point, my wife Madeline and I will have a connection. Make sure we have a really loving connection to start our day. And try to be as conscious as possible of these things, and really get that foundation, a spiritual foundation, settled before opening up the emails and doing all the other stuff, because the mind will get busy and perturbed and upset by these things. So you want to make sure you take time in the beginning of the day. That's how I look at it. That's what I've been doing. I've been doing this, for 50 years, and I think it's helpful because we're resonant beings, and we create a resonance. And the whole idea in many ways is to raise the frequency of our vibration, because we're living in a society where we're being bombarded all the time with low vibrational messages, low vibrational advertising and fear and competition and consumerism, all these things, the news, all this stuff. So if we're not consciously maintaining a high vibrational state, we're going to get dragged down, and that's good for business, right? I mean, they haven't made any money on me. The pharmaceutical industry has made no money on me in 50 years. I have not gone to a drugstore in 50 years and bought anything except maybe some Band-Aids once. But I just stay out of the medical. I'm completely out of it. I don't use it because I take responsibility for my health. But the only way to do that is to keep a high vibration. And we stay above those kinds of thoughts and feelings in the mass consciousness. And meditation is important. There's many different types of meditation. I hate to tell you what one to do, but to find your way. There's basically being aware of our breathing. Real breath is so important. Most of us in our society, we're never taught how to breathe properly. Most people in our society are taking shallow breaths all the time, and shallow breathing creates anxiety in a sense of disconnectedness. So if you just being aware of breathing throughout the day and let the breath go deep to the diaphragm. It's hard to be upset when you're breathing deeply and slowly and relaxed, and the whole body is energized by that. Exercise is important too. All kinds of exercise, and questioning everything about our society, the way we do everything. I mean, I'm radical. In our house we don't have furniture. I don't sit in a chair. We have cushions on the floor. I'm on the floor all the time. I figure if I'm on the floor, I can't fall down. So I'm just on the floor, and everything's on the floor. So I think, just question the way that our society does things, because for the most part, our society does things that are in a way that's not that healthy. So movement, exercise, aerobic, yoga, tai chi, qigong, all these things are really helpful. Breathing, right. Going into cold water regularly. I mean, water's another thing. And sun and nature. People are afraid of the sun. I think it's really a big mistake to be afraid of the sun. I haven't worn sunscreen probably for 50 years either, because my skin has gotten used to a lot of sun, so it works. But we put all these things on our skin that are toxic. I mean, read the labels. That's another thing. There's so many toxic chemicals in almost everything. So try to really question. I think one of the most important things to stay connected is just question everything we're buying and putting on our skin, and cleaning everything around us. Not only should it be vegan, but without chemicals. Chemicals really disturb us much more than I think we realize. And so the more that we can take responsibility for the way we're living and quality of our consciousness, the quality of our relationships. The greatest healer in many ways is nature, the sun, water, forest. There's a whole practice in ancient Japan called forest bathing. Just going out in the forest. You don't have to do anything. Just go out and be in nature. Your whole body. We are nature. One of the main problems we have, I think, while we're not healthy, is that we're living in human constructed boxes with artificial lighting, artificial heating, artificial noise and sound and everything. Get out in nature and breathe and take time to be silent. Silence is the best thing. Just listen internally and really be careful about what you're eating, that there's not toxins in it. Water and air also purify your water. All these things affect the body and mind are not separate. So anything that brings disharmony into our body will do the same thing for our mind. So to try to really understand these things, and again, realize that the governmental agencies have been completely captured. They are not going to protect you. You have to read labels. We have to read labels and be proactive in everything. Just be proactive. Take responsibility. Grow your own food as much as you can, or know the people who are growing it if you can. Support local decentralized farmers markets. Create community. That's really important. All these things go together. The main thing is connecting internally and then with everything we're doing outside of us. So those are a few tips, and I know it's past time, so we have to wrap it up here. But thank you very much, everyone, for your kind attention, and I really wish you all the best for these wonderful holiday season that we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the blessed words and the energy. This powerful enlightenment. It's expansive. Your energy is a beautiful gift to the world and everyone that's watching. Thank you for everything you're doing for our planet, for the animals, and always remember to take care of yourself, because it begins with you, right? You loving yourself first. Compassion for yourself spreads to the whole world.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very true. Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter, and thanks everyone.
And before we sign off, I'd love to add my appreciation. Dr. Tuttle and Marquita, you've added some beautiful thoughts too. And thank you everybody for joining us. I would like to invite everybody watching live and watching on YouTube in the future. After you watch this, please take a minute, write down 3 things that you've learned. Write down a couple things that you're going to commit to do differently. Write down a couple things that you commit to remember and be mindful and aware of as you go through your life. And then please stay connected. Tell your friends and people you know in your community to watch this. This is such an amazing interview, and interview may not be the best word, but Dr. Tuttle shared so much amazing wisdom with us, and I love the concept of bringing spirituality in. And please stay connected and keep watching for all the wonderful things we're going to be doing, hopefully wonderful things here in the future, and hopefully we'll get Dr. Tuttle back with us and maybe lead us through some exercises with mindfulness and spirituality. And with that, I'm ready to end this as we are over time, and I'll end with Namaste Vegan.
Right. Namaste Vegan. Okay. Much love to all of you. Thank you very much. And we look forward to another time. Thank you. Thanks.
Beautiful. Bye-bye.